Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into a fascinating journey covering the psychology of personal value, social architecture, and the ultimate mastery of your time. We're going to break down some incredibly powerful concepts about why we value what we value, how to purposefully design your inner circle, and how to forge your daily hours into something truly extraordinary.
Let me ask you something right up front that might actually sting a little bit. Why is it that we so often just ignore the nice, completely available person? You know exactly who I mean, right? The open book friend who shares every single detail of their day, replies to texts in 3 seconds flat, and is literally always around. Why are they so frequently taken for granted, while that slightly mysterious, less available person is highly valued and chased after? Well, it isn't about luck, it's pure psychology.
It comes down to a hard, scientific behavioral rule, the law of psychological scarcity. It's just like economics, really. If a resource is totally abundant and available everywhere for free, its perceived value basically drops to zero. But when something is rare, people pay attention. Constant availability essentially signals to the rest of the world that your time is cheap. Strategic absence, on the other hand, instantly builds intrigue and respect.
Let's move into Section 1, Mastering the Iceberg Theory.
Think about an iceberg. The most dangerous and powerful part that actually sinks ships? It isn't the tip sticking out of the water. It's that massive 90% hidden right below the surface. These days, so many people suffer from, well, basically online verbal diarrhea. They're posting every meal, complaining about their bosses, and blasting their entire internal monologue to the world. But true charisma and personal power, that comes from being the iceberg. You only want to show 10% of yourself, allowing that hidden 90% to project quiet strength and mystery.
So how do we actually pull this off? We've got 3 tactical moves to build some strategic mystery. First off, give incomplete answers. You really don't need to write a whole essay when one sentence does the trick. Second, practice the law of absence. Just learn to say a polite, elegant no. Tell them, unfortunately, I have a prior commitment. Even if that commitment is literally just reading a book at home in your pajamas, it signals that your time is yours, not theirs. And third, break your own routine so you never become a predictable commodity.
This brilliantly illustrates what I mean by an incomplete answer. Picture this. Someone asks about a massive crisis you just handled at work. Instead of giving them a 20-minute play-by-play drama of the whole shebang, you just smile calmly and say, "Everything is fine and we controlled the situation." Period. The silence that follows, it literally forces their imagination into overdrive. How did you do it? Who helped you? You've just planted a seed of curiosity that makes them desperate to know more.
To really nail this, we use what we call the charisma playbook. Step 1 is being unpredictable. You gotta shatter that box people try to put you in. If you're known as the quiet one, stand your ground fiercely next time a boundary is crossed. If you're the serious professional, suddenly reveal you know how to paint. But step 2 is the golden rule. Leave the interaction at its absolute peak. When the laughter is loudest and the conversation is absolutely firing on all cylinders, look at your watch, smile, and gracefully exit. It creates an emotional hunger. They haven't had enough of you yet, which guarantees they'll be excited for your presence next time.
Moving right along to Section 2, Designing Your Social Circles.
You know, the way we make friends completely flips as we get older. Think about university, like a train ride. You're on fixed tracks, moving from station to station, stuck in forced proximity with the exact same people. Friendships there are kind of circumstantial. It's a bit like airplane food, right? You eat it because you're stuck on the flight, but you definitely wouldn't commit to eating it for the rest of your life. But post-university life, that is a ship. You have the ultimate freedom to sail anywhere, handpick your crew, and navigate the open ocean.
And you really have to choose that crew carefully because of this specific number, 151. It goes back to Dunbar's number. Basically, we only have the cognitive capacity to maintain about 150 stable relationships. By the time you count your immediate family, your cousins, and your in-laws, you might actually already be at 151. You quite literally do not have the mental bandwidth to let everyone in. So you must be ruthlessly selective with who gets a seat on your ship. So post-university, highly successful people actually design their friendships. They do it in 3 ways. First, based on shared interests, like hobbies. Second, and this is huge, based on goals. Now, this isn't about being manipulative. It's about being strategic. Want to get into real estate? Go intentionally build relationships with real estate experts. Don't just leave your personal growth to chance. And then there's the third, really rare type, the therapeutic friends.
Therapeutic friends are often described as a bitter medicine. These are the people who are vastly superior to you in some specific area. Maybe they're insanely disciplined with money, or just incredibly wise. Honestly, hanging out with them isn't always a blast. They might actually make you feel a bit ignorant or small or like you have long ears, as the old saying goes, because next to their expertise, your flaws are staring you right in the face. But you absolutely need them. They're the ego-crushing cure that forces you to level up.
On the flip side, we've got to talk about enemies. Look, a core part of personal value is realizing that trying to please everyone is a total myth. If you actually stand for any real principles, you are going to create friction with some people. Welcome that. But here is the catch. Do not let holding grudges restrict your map. If you're avoiding a specific cafe or a certain gym just because someone you dislike might be there, you are literally shrinking your own world. Keep your principles for sure, but keep your map wide open.
Which brings us to Section 3. Time is your ultimate currency. Now I want you to think about the profound reality behind this number, 24. Obviously, we all have 24 hours in a day, but try to stop thinking of them as hours. Instead, imagine them as 24 kilograms of raw, heavy, unshaped iron handed to you every single morning.
Here's the thing, everyone gets the exact same 24 kilos. The billionaire and the guy doom-scrolling social media all day, they get the exact same amount. The difference in their lives is entirely about what they forge that iron into. Person A hammers it into a cheap $50 frying pan. Person B crafts it into specialized tent pegs worth maybe $300. But person C, they use insane discipline to machine that exact same iron into a highly complex airplane engine part worth $100,000. Your value isn't determined by how much time you have, it's determined by the craftsmanship of your priorities.
So how do you actually become that master craftsman? By handling the big rocks first. We're talking major spiritual duties, key family commitments, massive life goals. If you start your morning letting the tiny, sand-like tasks, TikTok, gaming, replying to trivial texts, fill up your jar, the big rocks just are not going to fit. Think of it like a small cavity in a tooth. If you ignore it because you're busy with trivial stuff, it will eventually swell up the night before a huge exam and become a massive, unmanageable emergency. Handle the big rocks first, and the small stuff easily fits into the gaps.
And when you handle those big rocks, you unlock what's called the 15-minute compound effect. There's this brilliant story from our source material about a young guy named Ahmed. Every day, his friends wasted 15 minutes arguing over teams before playing street soccer. Ahmed, he used those exact 15 minutes to sit with an English tutor. Just 15 minutes, but over the years, that tiny shift in trajectory compounded massively. By high school, his English was flawless. He breezed into medical school while his friends struggled, and he became an elite doctor. Never ever underestimate the raw power of just 15 focused minutes every single day.
Of course, all this takes serious effort, and I know people today are absolutely terrified of burnout. But consider this concept, pressing the spring down in your 20s. Working late, struggling, pressing yourself down hard early on. That isn't necessarily toxic burnout. It's the essential tension you need to launch yourself like a tightly coiled spring later in life. If you demand total comfort and relaxation when you're young, you are leaving that spring loose, and you'll have zero momentum when it's time to launch the rest of your life.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Now that you know about the law of psychological scarcity, how to carefully curate your social ship, and the compounding power of your time, ask yourself, are you forging your 24 hours into a cheap, widely available commodity? Or are you crafting them into a rare, mysterious, high-value asset? That raw iron is in your hands tomorrow morning. What are you going to build?